Boy. This is one hell of a keyboard with one hell of a price. It's the new Asus ROG AZOTH and it's pretty insane with a feature list longer than an oil pipeline and with a price tag of 420 Singapore dollars, you probably have to own an oil pipeline to be able to afford this keyboard. But it's insane spec-wise. 75% keyboard with an OLED screen, metal top case, gasket mounting and wireless top-of-the-line gaming performance. It's just about the craziest pre-built, pre-assembled, gaming-focused keyboard I have ever used and tested. But with its massively fat price tag and crazy specs that could technically appeal to both enthusiasts and gamers, who is it actually for? Starting with the overall design. It has a gamer aesthetic and RGB to boot. But most of the excessive markings and flair of this keyboard in terms of its design is really on the back and the bottom of the keyboard. So when you place it on your desk, you can't actually see it 90% of the time. The build quality is pretty good as well. The shell is metal on the top, but unfortunately plastic on the bottom. It's thankfully still very rigid and very hefty and very sturdy, but it is very unfortunate that most of this keyboard is plastic rather than metal, which really for 420 Singapore dollars shouldn't be the case. Now there is a good reason for this. Asus made the bottom half of the keyboard plastic so that the wireless antenna, I think it's called the Speed Nova chip, has the ability to pass through with its radio waves and keep low input lags and good connectivity and all the gamer's speed stuff. But the problem is they could have easily made this case quite a bit more metal. Perhaps a simple panel of plastic on the back so that the wireless receiver can pass through should be good enough. It doesn't have to be the whole bottom half of the case being plastic. I think it makes it feel a lot cheaper than it should be, but the key attraction with the design is not the build, it's the OLED display. We have seen this before on other keyboards like the Apex Pro from SteelSeries and the Satisfaction 75, but it's always a nice feature to have, especially for a super expensive, super high-end keyboard. It's pretty sharp, it's somewhat bright, and has every feature you would need for an OLED screen, which, let's be honest, is a bit of a gimmick still. You can put a variety of GIFs on here which can play on loop, or you can have a bunch of text on here or show status information like CPU or GPU usage. All of this is controlled via Armoury Crate, Asus's rather infamous controlling software. But while people are justifiably wary of the software, I have to be honest and report that I personally have not faced any issues setting up the Hub Ace and the AZOTH so far. Fingers crossed. There is a little volume knob on the side too, with a button for quickly selecting and changing different settings. Now this knob is actually a rocker switch that allows you to go through menus to quickly change other settings as well, like OLED brightness, keyboard brightness, and lighting modes. I would have personally preferred a fully rotating volume knob that you just kind of turned rather than you rocked up and down. Now I didn't have time to measure the wireless performance and I don't have the equipment as well. The smart fella over at the keyboard channel who reviewed his review earlier than me tested the wireless performance of the ROG AZOTH, and it seems like the wireless responsiveness of this keyboard is about the same level as wired, which makes it crazy fast. 0.2 seconds I think was his recording, and that makes it about 0.1 seconds faster, or 1 millisecond faster, than the QK75 that he compared it to. The switches in here are NX Reds, and as far as gaming performance goes, these Asus branded switches are decent. Like, they're light and they're smooth, about as good as you need for gaming. Battery life is respectable too, it seems. I haven't used it for very long, but I haven't had to worry about battery at all in the last 4 days that I've had it, despite me having the OLED screen on and the RGB on full blast at all times. But how about the feel and the sound, which arguably are the most important things with any mechanical keyboard? Well, it's clear that Asus were trying to learn from enthusiasts and custom keyboard builders, which was a very smart move in hindsight in making this keyboard very premium feeling amongst other gaming focused keyboards. The AZOTH isn't exactly full-on perfect from a hobbyist enthusiast standpoint, just a few stops short, because it clearly isn't targeting and prioritizing enthusiasts. Stock, the sound and the feel of this keyboard is actually pretty alright. It's clacky, it's high-pitched, and a little muted. And the Asus NX switches in here are decently smooth and pre-lubed, with stock stabs that are supposedly fancy ROG stabs. They're just co-star designs, which I think are pretty reasonable stock, and are going to be pretty good for an average gamer. For an enthusiast though, I would say that these stabilizers definitely need a little bit of work. But fret not, because this keyboard supports normal Cherry MX plate mount or screw-in stabs on the PCB as well, which is very convenient for future stabilizer upgradability. For gamers, I would have to say that this is easily the best sounding and feeling wireless keyboard out right now. But for enthusiasts with higher and stricter standards with sound and feel, this is where it's going to be a little bit more complicated. For one, the RGBs on the PCB is north-facing, which means it's going to cause interference with switches that aren't long pole stems, and Cherry MX or OEM keycaps. And that's actually the case here with the keyboard coming stock with clear interference sound, sounding pretty high-pitched and really clacky stock. Switch out the keycaps for an ASA one and it immediately sounds a lot cleaner and a lot deeper, which feels way more premium.
This is with the ASA keycap. This is with the stock keycap. ASA. Stock.
Another issue here are the switches. They aren't bad at all, but for 420 Singapore dollars, you kind of expect better switches to come stock than what is found here. These pre-lube NX switches are alright, but they still have a bit of wobble in them and their sound isn't really out of this world, which is what you expect for 420 Singapore dollars in a pre-built. I personally think the biggest bottleneck to the potential and performance of this keyboard are the switches. And if it had something like Adron Pro switches, Oil Kings or Box Inks, or maybe just a rebranded version of a high-end Enthusiast switch, it will be a much more appealing option to a lot of the enthusiast community. Thankfully though, this keyboard is hot swap and supports both 3 and 5 pin switches, so you can and should swap out these switches if you are an enthusiast that wants, nice sound and nice feel. Now, I can't open up this keyboard since it's on loan to me, and it'd be pretty disrespectful for me to open it up and mod and mess around with it. But the others who have opened it up have discovered that inside this keyboard, there is poron foam in the base of the case, as well as thick plate dampening foam. I personally recommend those who get this keyboard to try to mod the AZOTH, especially if you are an enthusiast, because this keyboard really has a lot of potential. It just needs a little bit of elbow grease to get there. And if you need help with modding, I can't help you since I didn't get the chance to do it, but you can check out Keyboard's video because it seems like he has a pretty good recipe for getting some amazing sound from the ROG AZOTH. The AZOTH also comes with a lubing kit that has Krytox 205G0 inside the box that has everything from brushes to lube to switch openers, which is quite convenient too for those purposes. All in all then, is the Asus AZOTH worth it? It's truly a unique product, to be fair. There's no other keyboard that you can get right now that has the combination of super high-end wireless performance that only the gaming brands like Razer, Logitech, Asus can afford to provide, that also has, on the other hand, a pretty good set of enthusiast-friendly features and keyboard design that has a pretty high ceiling if you're talking about sound and feel potential, and it also has a bunch of few fun gimmicks like the OLED display to boot. Now, it's still a few steps short of being a hands down victory. It's truly the best of both worlds for both gamers and enthusiasts, partly because the included switches aren't that exciting, and also north-facing RGBs, and also the plastic bottom case, but it's still, in my opinion, a pretty darn impressive product overall. But for 420 Singapore dollars though, it's a very, very pricey keyboard, even considering it's a full pre-built with switches and keycaps included. However, underperforming these switches and keycaps might be relative to the rest of the board and the price tag. And for me, personally, I think it's a great keyboard. It's just that Asus has stopped short of greatness with the AZOTH, just a few stops short. This could have easily been the perfect board for giving keyboard enthusiasts some top-tier wireless gaming speed if they had a few more improvements. It's quite close, but not perfect. And for 420 Singapore dollars, people kind of expect perfect. If Asus wanted to capture the enthusiast audience though, it really would be as simple as selling the AZOTH for 100 to 150 Singapore dollars less, with no switches, no caps, no stabs, or even lubing accessories, so that enthusiasts can take that saved money, buy the keycaps and switches they want, mod to their heart's content, and end up with a board that can give both blazing fast wireless and pretty good enthusiast features, with a little bit of elbow grease and modding, of course. To be fair to Asus though, this is clearly designed to be a gaming-centric keyboard first and foremost, just with enthusiast features added in to help expand its offering to help it stand out in the gaming sphere and of course appeal to a more premium audience. As far as gaming-centric keyboards go, these inclusions do succeed in making the AZOTH feel, sound, and look like one of the best keyboards in the gaming scene for sure. And it really does help gamers who are really rich have a taste of the hobbyist life without putting in any effort to mod or improve their keyboards. And I personally think it really doesn't hurt anyone, except the wallet of someone who might buy this keyboard. But if you can afford $420 for a wireless gaming keyboard, you're probably really loaded. So, tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think it's overpriced? Do you think it's too cheap because you're super rich? Do you think it's great? Do you think it's just a bad product? I would love to hear your opinions on the ROG AZOTH down in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe.